All right. Before we start, quick trigger warning. This document includes sexual assault allegations and other sensitive material. I'll be reading the court filing as written, so please take care of yourself and step away if needed. Due to the nature of this lawsuit, I'll save most of my personal thoughts and reading comments for the end, just so I can keep the pacing and just stay with what's going on. So, hey, everybody that is here and that's coming in. All right, that was a trigger warning. So I'm going to get started. And you can already see just on the complaint, and I am reading from the amended complaint that was filed. And this was filed in the electronic filing time and date stamp said October. The signature at the bottom says September, but it's 2025. Okay. So you see the amended complaint is for sexual assault and battery, gender violence, and negligent supervision. And one second here. All right. So we're going to get started on the reading. Here we go. Let's see here. Oh, hold on. I get my own screen up. I'm looking at the wrong thing. Okay. Tyreek Connerly is the plaintiff. She's a she. Versus Justin Combs, Sean Combs, Daddy's House Recordings Incorporated, DBA Combs Global, formerly known as Combs Enterprises, Bad Boy Entertainment Holdings, Bad Boy Productions Holdings, Bad Boy Books Holdings, Bad Boy Records, Bad Boy Entertainment LLC, Bad Boy Productions, organizational does 1 through 10, so companies that they may not know the name of yet, and individual does 1 through 10, individuals they may not know the name of yet. All right, amended complaint. Oh, one second. Let me see if I can put this up here so I can just. Sorry, y'all. I don't want to be looking for it later. Okay, I don't see it. Okay. Amended complaint. Plaintiff Tyreek Ty Connerly brings this action against defendants Justin Combs, Sean Diddy Combs, Daddy's House Recordings, and I'm just going to say et al. So we can go to the introduction. And plaintiff is an accomplished degreed professional. In 2017, defendant Justin Combs, referred to herein as Justin, used his father, Sean Diddy Combs' status as an A-list celebrity and mogul in the entertainment industry to lure plaintiff, a young female from Louisiana, to Los Angeles, where she was literally held prisoner for a weekend and repeatedly raped. Sean Diddy Combs and two others, as of yet unknown, masked men participated in the rape. This case seeks compensatory and punitive damages for that sexual assault. The conduct described herein is strikingly similar to how defendant Sean Combs and his entourage conducted themselves for many years. And it appears that Combs' penchant for sexual violence is shared by his son. Many individuals and entities facilitated and participated in this abhorrent purpose. Sean Combs and those he surrounded himself with believed they were above the law and that they could do whatever they wanted with impunity. They are most certainly not, and they cannot. For decades, Sean Combs abused, molested, raped, assaulted, threatened, and coerced men, women, minors, and others for sexual gratification, to assert dominance, and to conceal his abhorrent conduct. He accomplished these acts by and through a criminal enterprise built on his success as a rapper, record producer, and record executive. Combs is one of the wealthiest musical artists in the world, behind the facade of being a 3-time Grammy Award winner, discovering and developing multiple famous musical artists, and ranking on Forbes' list of the highest paid entertainers in the world. There existed something sinister, a dark underbelly of crime, sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, bribery, and prostitution. Combs is a menace to society, women, and children. While his wealth has kept him above consequence for years, Combs now faces the awesome power of the American judicial system and ultimately a jury of his peers who will be asked to punish him for the deplorable conduct described herein. And obviously, this came out before the verdict came out on Diddy. And you'll understand why he's listed once we get to the factual allegations. So it says Combs's business enterprise is central to the pervasive acts of sexual assault and abuse committed by him during the last decades. Combs operated his business, headquartered at various times in Manhattan and Los Angeles, under a variety of U.S. based corporate entities, including Bad Boy Entertainment, and I'm going to say Ital. Corporate entities in the Combs business portfolio included record labels, a recording studio, an apparel line, an alcoholic spirits promoting business, a marketing agency, talent discovery, a television network, and a media company. On the surface, each of these businesses served a legitimate purpose related to entertainment, music, and other subjects. But in reality, Combs, by and through himself, and his agents, employees, and contractors used these businesses to sexually assault, abuse, threaten, and coerce hundreds of individuals through sexual quid pro quo schemes, as well as to take advantage of individuals with impunity, thinking the victims would never seek recourse. Combs and his agents, employees, and contractors through these Combs businesses would tell victims, this is what it takes to be famous. What are you willing to do to become a star? And perform this sexual act or else to coerce the victim into performing a non consensual sexual act for the gratification of Combs and his cohorts. Members and associates of the Combs business engaged in and or attempted to engage in, among other activities, sex trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for the purposes of prostitution, coercion and enticement to engage in prostitution, narcotics offenses, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. The Combs business constituted an ongoing organization whose members functioned as a continuing unit for a common purpose of achieving the objectives of Combs. Combs's pervasive history of sexual assault and violence. For years, Combs and his businesses engaged in a persistent and pervasive pattern of abuse toward women, men, and minors. This abuse was at times verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual. As part of his pattern of abuse, Combs manipulated both men and women to participate in highly orchestrated performances of sexual activity with both commercial sex workers and unsuspecting partygoers. In some cases, these were individuals who were contractors or vendors. In other cases, they were random individuals pulled from a hotel lobby, a show, or off the street. Combs ensured participation from these individuals by, among other things, obtaining and distributing narcotics to them with or without their knowledge, controlling their careers, leveraging his financial support, and threatening to cut off the same, and using intimidation, violence, and illicit drugs. Combs, while celebrated for his business acumen and influence in the entertainment world, has often been described in a more troubling light as powerful, manipulative, and problematic. His aggressive tactics, both in business and personal dealings, have drawn criticism, with many viewing him as someone who leverages his power to intimidate and control. This darker side of Combs's persona has been underscored by the numerous lawsuits and allegations that have surfaced over the years. Despite his undeniable success, his rise to the top is marred by a reputation for being ruthless and manipulative, using his influence in ways that have left a trail of legal and personal controversies, including but not limited to the following. I'm going to skim the ones that aren't related to um, like the sexual deviant stuff. So the nightclub shooting incident in 1999, multiple assault allegations, business disputes, and claims by Cassie Ventura, Combs' former girlfriend, filed a lawsuit accusing him of years of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse during their relationship. Cassie alleged repeated instances of assault, coerced sexual acts, and drug use, all contributing to an environment of fear and manipulation. Combs particularly fancied the use of the popular date rape drug Rohypnol, or GHB, to commit heinous non-consensual acts of sexual violence and rape onto countless victims. Combs often would secretly use the drug in an alcoholic beverage served at his parties, typically champagne or lemon drops. Partygoers were forced to consume the alcoholic beverage containing GHB either prior to entering or while at Combs's party. There are also allegations of Combs dousing victims in lotions or similar body oils, also laced with GHB, so that the drug would be absorbed through the victim's skin and make it easier to assault him or her. Further, it is well known that Combs had a practice of lacing water bottles with other substances such as Xanax and distributing them at his parties. Combs' recurrent and pervasive physical abuse took place for multiple decades. His tendencies of violence and sexual assault were no doubt well known amongst his colleagues, employees, agents, and businesses. On numerous occasions, from at least on or about 1996 and continuing years, Combs assaulted women and men by striking, punching, dragging, throwing objects at, and kicking them. Combs assaulted children, both physically and sexually. In 1996, Combs was found guilty of criminal mischief for threatening a photographer from the New York Post with a gun. In 1999, he was arrested and charged with second-degree assault and criminal mischief in connection with assaulting a record exec. He was arrested again the same year for his involvement in a shooting at a club in New York. Another instance of violence occurred at a Los Angeles hotel in or about March 2016, which was captured on video and later publicly reported, where Combs kicked, dragged, and threw a vase at a woman as she was attempting to leave his hotel room. When hotel security staff intervened, Combs attempted to bribe the staff to ensure silence. In the past year, numerous civil complaints have been filed by plaintiffs who allege that they had been sexually abused by Combs between 1991 and 2009. In November 2023, three lawsuits were filed against Combs under New York's Adult Survivors Act. Cassie Ventura, an artist signed to Bad Boy Records, sued Combs in New York for rape and physical abuse. She alleged Combs facilitated these acts by and through supplying Miss Ventura with copious amounts of drugs and urging her to take them beginning in 2006. Joy Dickerson Neal also sued Combs in New York, alleging Combs drugged her, sexually assaulted her, and secretly recorded the assault in 1991. Liza Gardner, whom Combs met at an event hosted by a record label affiliated with Bad Boy, sued him for allegedly raping her and a friend in 1990 or 1991 when she was only 16. In December 2023, an anonymous plaintiff sued Combs in New York for allegedly drugging and gang raping her in 2003 when she was only 17 years old. This victim alleged that employees and business associates of Combs, through their affiliation with the Bad Boy enterprise, lured her to Combs' home, where Combs then raped her. In February 2024, Rodney Lil Rod Jones, one of Combs' former producers, sued Combs for allegedly forcing him to engage in unwanted sex acts and sex trafficking, among other allegations. Mr. Jones alleged that Combs regularly drugged others, including minors, by giving them drugs laced with ecstasy and other date rape drugs. Mr. Jones alleged that Combs in fact drugged him as well in order to commit acts of sexual assault. In May 2024, former model Crystal McKinney and April Lampros sued Combs. Ms. McKinney alleged that Combs drugged and sexually assaulted her at his recording studio in 2003. Mimicking what has now become a known pattern, Combs promised Ms. McKinney to help her with her modeling career in exchange for engaging in sexual conduct with him. Ms. Lampros, an intern at Arista Records, which was an owner of Bad Boy, also sued Combs in May 2024 in New York County Supreme Court for raping her on multiple occasions, secretly filming these acts and showing the recordings to multiple people. Ms. Lampros also alleges that Combs ordered her to take drugs on one occasion before he raped her. In July 2024, former adult film star Adria English, who was employed by Combs as an entertainer at his infamous white parties that brought together the biggest names in the music and entertainment industries, sued Combs in the Southern District of New York for sex trafficking, alleging that he required her to consume drinks laced with ecstasy and secretly recorded the sexual acts. In September 2024, singer and songwriter Dawn Angelique Richard also sued Combs. Richard was employed by Combs as part of the girl group Danity Kane, formed by Combs, and later as a key member of Combs' band Diddy Dirty Money. She sued Combs in New York for sexual assault, false imprisonment, and for subjecting her to hostile working conditions due to her gender, including degrading comments and threats. Ms. Richard has alleged that Combs regularly supplied others, including minors, with copious amounts of drugs and alcohol and subjected them to sexual acts while they were sedated and or unconscious due to the drugs and alcohol. In September 2024, a federal grand jury in Manhattan indicted Combs and charged him with sex trafficking, racketeering, and the creation of a criminal enterprise in which he abused, threatened, and coerced women and others around him to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. See United States of America versus Sean Combs. The indictment explains that Combs's abuse of women and minors was enabled and conspired with by the employees, resources, and influence of the multifaceted business empire that he led and controlled, creating a criminal enterprise whose members and associates engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other crimes, sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. Combs's long history of violence unequivocally establishes that his actions are motivated by gender, both men and women. Combs has a profound contempt for women and a desire to dominate both minors and other men. His conduct shows a long-standing practice of denigrating, defeating, and attempting to humiliate men, women, and children. His practices and desires are different for men, women, and children, but his actions are unequivocally motivated by the victim's particular gender and age. Plaintiff's allegations herein substantially mirror Combs's prior conduct as established through criminal indictments and other lawsuits. Through this case, plaintiff seeks a full measure of justice from a man who thought his power, money, and influence rendered him untouchable. Plaintiff joins many other victims by filing this complaint in hopes their common voice makes it impossible for Combs to assault another person ever again. Okay. All right. The parties. The first party is Plaintiff Tyreek Connerly, who is a female who resides in New York, New York. Defendant Justin Combs is a male who, on information and belief, resides in Los Angeles, California. In addition to residing in New York City, New York, Justin Combs is the son of defendant Sean Combs. And then we have defendant Sean Combs, and we already talked about his background and companies. And then the other ones are the other companies like defendant Daddy's House Recording, and they're showing, okay, listing more parties that we've already discussed. And they're still going about the parties. I'm getting to just the sentences that kind of go back to what they're saying. So again, she's alleging Combs used the Bad Boy premises, recording studio, and their ownership and titles at Bad Boy to commit the unlawful sexual violence against plaintiff described herein, and or to harass and subsequently intimidate him into silence after the sexual assault. Now, this is where I had to go back and check, but she does continue to refer to herself as a woman, but right there, it did say intimidate him into silence. But for the purpose of this lawsuit, she's a woman. And I'm going down because they're describing the entities again. Okay, defendants' organizational does 1 through 10 are currently unknown entities who were owned and or employed by defendant Combs and enabled and conspired with the commission of the conduct complained of herein. And as the parties engage in discovery, plaintiff retains the right to amend the complaint to add these entities by name. Defendants' individual does 1 through 10 are currently unknown celebrities and or persons of interest who enabled and or conspired with the commission of the conduct complained of herein. As the parties engage in discovery, plaintiff retains the right to amend the complaint to add these individuals by name. Okay. It says each of the Combs corporations aided and abetted Combs in committing the unlawful sexual violence against plaintiff described herein, are alter egos for Combs completely dominated by him and used for his personal interests and to engage in wrongdoing which harmed plaintiff and others, and or serve or have served as vehicles for Combs to move, dispose of, and or insulate his assets, including in connection with his criminal activities, and to avoid compensating the victims of his many crimes, including the plaintiff. And then the jurisdiction, she explains why she's doing it in this specific court. And then we are on the factual allegations. Okay. In March or April 2017, Justin contacted plaintiff through Snapchat. The two messaged back and forth, and plaintiff eventually sent Justin risque photos at Justin's request. That same day, Justin offered to fly plaintiff out to Los Angeles for a weekend. At the time, plaintiff lived in New Orleans, Louisiana. Plaintiff was interested in a career in the entertainment industry, a subject she and Justin had discussed in their messages. Justin told plaintiff that a trip to Los Angeles would be helpful for her in terms of her potential career. In fact, Justin told plaintiff that if she came to Los Angeles, he would get her a position with Revolt TV in Atlanta through his and his father's connections. On or around Friday, April 14th, 2017, plaintiff flew to Los Angeles. A driver in a black SUV picked her up that night and took her to a house Justin called the Glass House. On information and belief, the Glass House is an ultra high-end property available for rent on Loma Linda Drive in Beverly Hills. That night, plaintiff and Justin mostly talked, sharing a relaxed evening alone in the palatial house. They stayed at the house all evening, which surprised plaintiff as she had expected to go out on the town. On Saturday, they stayed in the house all day as well, surprising and frustrating plaintiff. When asked if they were ever going to leave, Justin abruptly said no. That day and into the evening, Justin offered plaintiff liquor and then marijuana, which plaintiff believed was laced due to the effect it had on her. Justin then offered and made plaintiff take various pills or poppers throughout the day. After Justin and plaintiff had consumed multiple drugs, 3 other men arrived at the house. All 3 wore masquerade masks. 2 were unrecognizable to plaintiff, but she recognized the third as defendant Diddy, due in part to his stature and mannerisms, but also because Justin referred to him on at least one occasion as Pops. Plaintiff was taken upstairs to a bedroom. There she was told, "You better let this happen or else." In that bedroom, each of the 3 men took turns raping plaintiff both anally and orally while she was drugged and incapacitated. The brutal gang rape of plaintiff continued from Saturday evening through at least midday Sunday, with the 3 men continuing to take their turns abusing plaintiff. On Monday, plaintiff was driven back to the airport and dropped off. Throughout the weekend and afterwards, Justin held over plaintiff's head the possibility of a job with Revolt TV, which never materialized, as well as the photos she had sent to him on Snapchat, which he had saved and could release at his pleasure. As a result of the abuse, plaintiff has suffered severe emotional distress, emotional anguish, fear, anxiety, humiliation, embarrassment, physical injury, emotional injury, and trauma. First claim for relief: sexual assault and sexual battery. In taking the actions alleged herein, defendants Justin Combs and Sean Combs intended to cause a harmful or offensive sexual contact with plaintiff. A harmful or offensive sexual contact with plaintiff did in fact result due to the actions of defendant Combs and other yet unnamed defendants. Plaintiff did not consent to the sexual act. In committing the acts herein alleged, defendants Justin Combs and Sean Combs committed sexual battery against plaintiff in violation of Civil Code Section 1708.5, which acts furthermore were ratified and or perpetrated by the Combs businesses as alleged herein. In committing the acts herein alleged, Justin Combs and Sean Combs violated plaintiff's right pursuant to Civil Code Section 43 of protection from bodily restraint or harm and from personal insult. In committing the acts herein alleged, defendant Justin Combs and Sean Combs violated his duty pursuant to Civil Code Section 1708 to abstain from injuring plaintiff's person or infringing upon her rights. The Combs business enabled and conspired with Combs to commit the offending sexual battery because Combs sexually assaulted plaintiff at a party related to or referencing the Combs business. On information and belief, Combs businesses routinely committed sexual assault and sexual battery as detailed in other civil lawsuits to further the business purpose of Combs' enterprise. Given Combs' longstanding pattern and practice of committing sexual violence, the Combs business had and or should have had knowledge of Combs using parties and venues for this unlawful conduct and did nothing to stop it. The Combs business enabled and conspired with Combs to commit the offending sexual battery by failing to, among other things, protect plaintiff from a known danger and or have sufficient policies and procedures in place to prevent sexual battery and or train their employees on identifying and preventing sexual battery. Given Combs's long-standing pattern and practice of committing sexual violence, including on premises owned and or operated by defendants, the Combs Corporation had and or should have had knowledge that Combs was a danger to plaintiff and did nothing to stop Combs. The Combs business enabled and conspired with Combs to commit the offending sexual battery by failing to properly supervise. The Combs business had knowledge and or should have had knowledge of Combs's widespread and well-known practice of committing sexual battery and gender-motivated violence, including on premises owned and or operated by defendants, and did nothing to stop it. The Combs corporations further enabled and conspired with Combs to commit the offending sexual battery by actively placing, maintaining, and or employing Combs in positions of power and authority, despite the fact that they knew and or should have known that Combs had a widespread and well-known practice of committing sexual assault and sexual battery, including on premises owned and or operated by defendants. Combs used his titles and authority conferred by the Combs business, including as CEO, founder, and chairman, to facilitate and perpetuate the violent assault on plaintiff and to intimidate and force plaintiff to keep quiet in subsequent years. On information and belief, plaintiff alleges that defendant organizational does 1 through 10 inclusive are other parties not yet identified who have enabled and conspired with Combs to commit the offending sexual battery in the ways articulated above and or in other ways and or ratified the sexual battery thereafter. On information and belief, plaintiff alleges that defendant individuals those 1 through 10 inclusive are other parties not yet identified who have enabled and conspired with Combs to commit the offending sexual battery in the ways articulated above and in or other ways. Or in other ways. As a direct and proximate result of the conduct of defendants, plaintiff has suffered severe emotional distress, emotional anguish, fear, anxiety, humiliation, embarrassment, physical injury, emotional injury, and trauma, and both economic and non-economic damages. The injuries suffered by plaintiff are substantial, continuing, and permanent. Plaintiff is informed and based thereon alleges that the conduct of defendants Justin Combs and Sean Combs was oppressive, malicious, and despicable, in that it was intentional and done in conscious disregard for the rights and safety of others, and was carried out with a conscious disregard of plaintiff's right to be free from such tortious behavior, such as to constitute oppression, fraud, or malice pursuant to Civil Code Section 3294, entitling plaintiff to punitive damages against defendants Justin Combs and Sean Combs. Second claim for relief, gender violence. Okay, I'm trying to go down just a little bit. Defendants' acts committed against plaintiff as alleged herein constitute gender violence as a form of sex discrimination, in that one or more of defendants' acts would constitute a criminal offense under state laws that has as an element the use, attempted use, or threatened use of physical force against the person of another, committed at least in part based on the gender of the victim, whether or not those acts have resulted in criminal complaints, charges, prosecution, or conviction. I do want to say this before I forget this thought. I'm going to keep going, but I do wonder, and I'll get to the other parts that are alleged, but with the sex discrimination, I wonder if that would hold, since in the introduction, it's alleged that he has done the same to males and females. So I don't know if there can be a discrimination if both genders are mentioned as being victims, in about basically almost the same ways. I'm going to go down some because it talks about the businesses doing the same thing. The gender violence was a substantial factor in causing plaintiff's harm. As a proximate result of defendant's actions, plaintiff is entitled to actual damages, compensatory damages, punitive damages, injunctive relief, any combination of those, or any other appropriate relief. And then third claim for relief, negligent supervision retention. And that goes back, I'm just going to say, to the businesses that she's saying should have had knowledge and tried to prevent his actions. I'm going to go down some. I'll read this part. Combs had a widespread and well-known practice of committing sexual assault and sexual battery, including on premises owned and or operated by defendants. Combs used his titles and authority conferred by the Combs business, including as CEO, founder, and chairman, to facilitate and perpetuate the violent assault on plaintiff and to intimidate and force plaintiff to keep quiet in subsequent years. And then it talks about how she suffered harm. It's a demand for a jury trial and prayer for relief. Plaintiff Tyreek Connerly prays for the following relief against defendants for past, present, and future general damages in an amount to be determined at trial, for past, present, and future special damages, including but not limited to past, present, and future lost earnings, economic damages, and others in an amount to be determined at trial, any appropriate statutory damages for cost of suit, for interest as allowed by law, for any appropriate punitive or exemplary damages, for attorney's fees, for such other and further relief as the court may deem just and proper in these circumstances. And this was dated September 24th, 2025, but it was electronically filed in October 2025, I believe. Yeah, October 13th, 2025 is when it was electronically filed. Okay, time to give my thoughts, and then I'll try to scroll back up to read some of your thoughts as well. So the twins are with Quincy. I only put Justin Combs. It's Justin and Diddy, so I don't even know all his kids' names and who's in the set of who. I'm not even gonna hold you. I do not. I'm trying to remember my own nieces and nephews. I do not remember who multiple kids of everybody unless they're mentioned like this. Then it's like, okay, well now I remember Justin, but before this I wasn't even thinking about Justin, to be honest. Okay, I have a few things, and I kind of probably gonna jump around on some of my thoughts that I have. There is a very blatant history that at least for sure Diddy has. And after I watched that documentary, and I want to say specifically, was her name Joy? And then also Lil Rod and his co-founder slash like stepbrother. That's because I didn't know a lot of this stuff. I only knew about Cassie and Beyond, kind of. Um, Obviously, historically, it is very believable that this happened. Either way, I already know Tyreek is or has been eviscerated in the media. She will be because there's gonna be, some strong opinions about some things. There's some naivete in here, like not being okay. Whenever there's something that someone wants and someone else has it, there is a power dynamic that's already there anyway. So the willing part was obviously she willingly flew to meet Justin. That part for sure was willing. Up to the alcohol and marijuana, willing. It seemed like willing, willing enough, but starting to lean over into the gray area of possible coercion. Um, because now it's like I don't know, but that's when you start doing the people pleasing part of it. If you're not comfortable with it, but you still want to do it because you might have a future career and things like that. And I do wish for everybody that nothing is ever worth it to get to be under someone's manipulation before it gets to the point where now you're held against your will and everything. I can totally clearly picture that if it did happen, I can picture them doing what she alleges. Do I know if they did it this time? I don't know. I'm reading what she alleges, but I can clearly picture them doing such a thing. Um, and obviously for Diddy, this wasn't the first lawsuit. It won't be the last. And I have a feeling for Justin, there's probably going to be more that come out and say something as well. I think even Diddy's chef had sued him, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember if it was his. It was another celebrity I was looking at, but I feel like there was a chef in there for someone that also alleged some things going on. I'm looking at my notes that I had wrote before I read this too. Obviously, if any of it's true, I hope she wins her case. The best outcome, though, is probably going to be that they settle out of court. Usually, you don't win against people like this. But also, even with her bringing up the RICO stuff, I was like, well, they kind of already ruled on the RICO stuff, so that's not going to be a thing. But sometimes the I'm almost going to say the smaller fish can get a conviction when the bigger convictions didn't happen. And I'm going to call back to like OJ, his big trial, no conviction. Later on, there was minor convictions that kind of like ate away at some things, if that makes sense. So just because she's the smaller lawsuit doesn't mean that there's not something she may win. Um, with this history being known now remember, she's saying this happened back in 2017, and back for me in 2017, I didn't know about Diddy's history like that. Like I didn't know myself. Um, and I'm just thinking about someone that's trying to break into the industry, and then it's not even necessarily him, it's his son. So it's like a clout thing, but you're dealing with the son. And I can see a young lady being lured to Los Angeles, and I could see them doing that. And then I can see later naked pictures being held over their head. I know it's easier said than done. I would advise don't send anyone pictures. Like I've been married a long time, and I have yet to send my husband a naked picture because I'm just so paranoid about it. Like we're good, and I'm still paranoid about it. Like I just am. To each their own, and not everyone is a horrible person out there that will do something. Um, and I know it's such a common thing. It's almost like Snapchat is a common way that people are going to be sending them. But if this was regular employment, if this was like just employment of a 9 to 5, right? Um, it's clear coercion if this was alleged in another dynamic in just a normal corporation, a normal company, because the power dynamics already there. You can't have any type of this kind of contact with a potential employee and stuff like that. The entertainment industry leaves a lot open to you're just people are not protected under those type of employment laws most times. I know there's exceptions, but overall I feel like this is why this is so common. Because there's clear quid pro quo, as she mentioned earlier in the lawsuit, and that's do this for me, I'll do that for you. And there's clear just being in those circumstances that you're being coerced into doing something, and this is assuming all things are true in the lawsuit. Um, this is going to be a hard uphill battle for her. It just is. I mean, I'm looking at how things were looked at his bigger trial with the bigger names and other things. And I think for now, only Cassie is the one that's gotten a settlement from anything like this. And obviously, that's again, her name alone does draw enough attention to this that they would want her to be quiet, so they would settle and things like that and not go further. But others aren't going to enjoy that type of luxury. Um, I am everywhere with this one. I don't think anyone deserves to have anything done to them non-consensually. Consensually, sorry. So from the time something was laced without her knowledge to when, as she alleges, Justin and the other two strangers, whether one was Diddy or whoever, that is illegal, is criminal. But of course, there's a statute of limitations, and also there's a bigger burden of proof criminally than there is civilly. There's many reasons that people do civil. I know everybody thinks of the money first, but even just getting any kind of ruling, I say conviction, but I should say any kind of ruling, um, it's very hard. It's still going to be hard on the civil side, but it's even harder on the criminal side. And I don't know if she retained any evidence, like anything from their Snapchat history, which I know Snapchat disappears, but there's always a way, Um, and then DNA wise, was she able to retain anything? Did she even have the strength to go do a rape kit at the time? The mental capacity to do a rape kit at the time? There's just so many factors that we don't know yet. And obviously she won't put everything in the beginning of her complaint of her lawsuits. The other stuff would come out when it's time to come out if they actually took this to a jury trial. Um, so there's just a lot going on. But I obviously I don't think anyone should have something done to them and they did not consent to that act, no matter what it was. This was, at least her initial complaint was definitely published before 50 Cent's documentary of Diddy came out. Then, of course, this is public record because Lil Rod and all of them had already filed lawsuits. And then, of course, you have people back from the 90s filing lawsuits against Diddy for assault and secretly recording them. So there's just a lot happening here. So if it happened to her, I want her to somehow be made better. Um, it's just that's a lot. So let me look at y'all's comments real fast and see what y'all saying. Let me see. Okay, LaDon said, "This is so sad, and we don't even know how the girls will show up in life being raised under his watch." True, true. Um, okay, y'all talking about the other kids with Quincy, and I'm like I said, I do not know these kids' names like that. Jacqueline said, "Wow, this is a heck of a legacy, following in the footsteps of the father." Yeah, and honestly, if not her as a victim, I clearly can see Justin as a sexual deviant. And I want to say this: people need to go ahead and they need to keep a sharp eye on. Trey Songz has I don't know if they did file the complaints, but he's had a lot of allegations out on him. Um, it's a lot on them. And it's the same pattern, same like script, just different people in the script every time. Yeah, now Cassie has a lawsuit against her. Is that the one where the guy that was a sex worker in the documentary is now he's suing Cassie and Diddy? Is that the one? Because I started hearing about that. Because I don't know if I can take him seriously, not because he's a sex worker. It's I've seen some clips on social media, and then because he was operating in the capacity of his occupation, not because he's a sex worker, can't take him seriously, but because of what is going on. I didn't read it, so if he might be talking about some acts of violence in there or something. So I just don't want to go too far into it. But he just gives me stay away from it vibes. That's what he gives me. Yeah, more coming, Gigi. Definitely, I definitely could see more coming. I sure could. Trey Songz got arrested for fighting. That'll be the least of his issues. Even if it happens when he's Bill Cosby's age, Trey Songz is going to go down for this for his acts against women. He Some allegations have been so bad that a woman, at least one woman, had to go have surgery. It was so bad. I think the Uber driver got her to the hospital, but she had to have surgery because of what he did was so bad. Um, and then who was the other one at the top of my mind? I just had it. Oh, Drake. But Drake's apparently, I think, have happened more overseas, so they're not really touching over here like that yet. But Drake is on the radar. Um, Chris Brown's on the radar. One of the things that I saw and read was that he was forcefully putting pills in girls' mouths at the club. Not every girl, but girls that reported back later. So yeah, it's a lot of them. It's a lot of it went like only way I saw it was articles, not anyone coming on video and discussing it. I only saw it. I'm talking about Drake. I only saw it because I was reading up on some things, and his name probably popped up when I was looking at something in relation to Trey Songz. But yeah, his was overseas, the one that I know of. So yeah, it's but the employment laws don't seem to protect people that could be in a quid pro quo situation if you're in the entertainment industry. Um, but yeah, she has an uphill battle. Yeah, it is as a whole. Demi, you're right. You could name almost anybody, and you just never know. You never know. The more popular they are, the more I'm like, ooh, let me chill out because I don't know what's gonna come out about you later when you're past your prime. So yes, I agree with you. I agree with you. It is that industry. And I just wonder what do people see at those white parties? Like that one random girl that Aubrey talked about saying that she saw that Aubrey looked inebriated, but that, Diddy, Justin, and maybe somebody else was in there taking advantage of her. She doesn't want to believe it at this point. for my mental sanity, I would be like Aubrey and probably not want to believe it either. I mean, because what can you do now? You don't even remember it. And someone could have violated you like that. So I did get where she was coming from in that documentary when she talked about it. It's just a lot. It's a lot. And then you see like even with Don Richard, it probably happened to her. He's violating everybody around him, apparently. But what I hate to see, this is what I hate to see. At what point did you notice he was taking advantage of minors, commit or applying minors with alcohol? What point did you notice those things? Did you wait till it happened to you to talk about that? I mean, you did technically because obviously she didn't say anything until she filed her lawsuit. But I'm just like, maybe in the lawsuit she says she did report it to authorities and stuff like that at some point. So we're seeing this because the lawsuit would get bigger than her reporting to authorities things that she saw. But did all this come after you get the groups disbanded? I just hate for I the ones that were still there out of fear of safety, because he's out here actually committing violence too. He's not just even it's not even the sexual violence. It's like blowing up people's cars and threatening that they won't just have a life at all. I'm not saying it's right, but I more understand that I hate it. I hate it for anyone that was around and saw things and didn't help victims because they were waiting for their turn of fame, payout, stuff like that. For the ones that were there out of more fear of bodily harm, I I I mean, when who's gonna believe you? That Diddy's gonna do something to you. Now people will probably believe you, but at that time, who would believe you? So I had so much a mixed bag of feelings when it comes to these, especially for the ones that benefited, for a while. Then the high wore down, and then it's just like they'll look at employees at jobs. So everything was fine, but then you get fired, and then all of these things have been happening, but you never documented or made a complaint until then. Those things still could have very well been happening, but they are going to look and just, would you have been okay with that culture continuing if you didn't get fired type stuff? It's a lot. It is a lot, and I'm only just trying to bring up discussion points, but I don't want there to be victims of these crimes. I don't. I just wish people it just didn't have to happen to them. So I'm not at all I'm not trying to victim blame, but I do want to have a discussion about it, and that's why I'm reading the lawsuit. And shout out to my big sis Chit Chat. She was like, "I want to hear your thoughts about this." So here are my thoughts about this. This is what I'm thinking, and I'm just kind of open dialoguing with it. Yeah, money and fame is a big, big, big one. Um, but I acknowledge that even in this allegation and in others, people were psychologically held against their will. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about if only the thing that was held above was the money and fame. And you saw those victims. I wish you would have spoken up for those victims, is what I'm saying. And I can acknowledge you can still be a victim yourself as you're not speaking up for other victims. Former victims turn into violators a lot of times. It's a lot. It's very complex. It's very interlaced, and I do get that. So those are my thoughts. Yeah, and some spoke out as soon as it happened. In some instances, like people, if you knew, you knew. I didn't know, but people knew about his reputation back in the '90s, and they were trying to speak out, but he would drown it out. And can I tell y'all about that documentary when that juror came on? Both of them. But I was looking at the woman juror like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I was so disappointed, and she looked so pleased with herself. And I know I can't make someone else believe what I believe, but I was very disappointed in that juror. I was disappointed in the other one too, because people don't just leave abusive relationships the first time. There's plenty of statistics out there. They'll vary the number, but it's like they'll say like between 5 and 12 times is what it takes to finally leave an abusive relationship. And then think about you trying to leave, and then he's blowing up someone else's car that you're associated with, or venturing out to and stuff like that. That's not even just normal trying to leave. Like it's a lot. It's a lot. And I just did they get little perks? They were strung along and they got some perks, but it was a lot that they paid for psychologically and physically with their body. Um, whew, child. Demi said, unfortunately, people want the fame and fortune so much they fall for the okey doke and do what they are told because they think they will get what they want. Yeah. Even his half, I'm saying it's his half brother or step brother, but the one that co-founded that he forced him to sell the stocks back to him. Um, he, like he said, he was part of the Diddy basically fan club. Even those things, he suspected some things were happening to him, and eventually he knew some things were happening to him, violating like his body wise. But had Diddy not just ridden him off and kicked him all the way out, or well, he said he also didn't like the last things he saw as far as I think his time was Biggie was his last part, but he stayed through a lot before his last straw came. Oh yeah, well I'm glad your son got out of it too, Demi, because it's brutal and there's not a lot of empathy to go around. There's not. But I'll end it there. Those are really my thoughts. I will look at y'all's comments when the video ends and stuff too for the replay gang. Thank you for being here while I read this. And yeah, I'll see y'all soon on other topics. All right, talk to you later. Bye.